A few years ago, several years ago now, we were trying to decide what we were going to do for New Year's Eve. And I wanted to go, it was in the pre-COVID days, I wanted to go to this big event they were going to be holding in downtown Vancouver. It was going to be like a roaring 20s party with hundreds of people there, but it looked like it would be totally fun. Like, I enjoy lots of people, so that was what I wanted to do. My husband, Walt, did not. So he wanted to go. He just wanted to stay home and kind of just relax. So we had a little bit of a negotiation and decided we were going to go out for dinner, and then we would walk and see the fireworks that one could see near Science World. So we were at the keg. We planned to go to the keg at Granville Island, and then we were going to walk to see the fireworks. Great. Neither of us got 100% of what we wanted, but we both found something that we both could enjoy together. Aces. We get to the dinner, we start chit-chatting with the waiter, and we look at the time, and it is 5 minutes to midnight, and we're still in the restaurant. So, and it was all because the waiter was wonderful, and he was interested in astronomy, and Walt's interested in astronomy, and there was just this chit-chat, and then we look at the time. So then we make this crazy dash out of the restaurant, and hear the fireworks going and the bells clinging and all that stuff as we're in a tiny little dark alley in the middle of Granville Island. So in this time where I had envisioned all of this fanfare, and he had envisioned kind of putting up with me, at least with fireworks, we end up in this place that's in the middle of nowhere, enjoying the darkness. So I was telling my sister about this the following day. I was a little disappointed, but you know, you kind of roll with it. And I was telling her the following day about this experience, and she said, "Oh, the reason that it upset you a little is because you were attached to the vision that you had." And it was like, there's my firework that just went off. Have you ever had that experience where you just have this sort of flash of, oh, that's what happened? That's what happened for me that night. And so even though this was 10 years ago, if not more, it is a story that I've told often because it's a story that has held so much impact for me. And I realized, if I were to be truly honest about it, there was a part of me that was kind of grumpy about this not working out the way I wanted. Like, I was okay with it, but I wasn't really the best company, shall we say. Isn't it funny how sometimes when we have a picture in our mind about how things should go, or how we want them to go, or how we envision that it might be, that it doesn't always work out that way. Life gets in the way of these pictures. And sometimes it leads us to be kind of bitchy or grumpy. I know you don't hear that very often from up here, unless you know me, then you do. But have you noticed that that's happened in your life? That if things don't quite go the way you want, and you kind of carry it with you. I named today's talk Mind the Gap. And it's inspired by the underground tube rail line in London, England, where if you go from the platform to the train, they have these signs everywhere that say, "Mind the Gap." And what they're trying to remind people to do is to pay attention to the gap between the train and the platform. They don't want people to trip. And I thought we can use that I can use that. This idea of the gap being the thing that can sometimes trip us up. So what is the gap that I'm talking about? Well, I'd like you all to imagine a page of paper. And at the top is your expectation, your vision, your dream, your fantasy, whatever word you want, about how things ought to be. And at the bottom of the page, imagine reality, what actually happened. And to the extent that these two things, reality and expectation, are far apart, the bigger the gap, the more we suffer. The more grumpy we are, the more grumpy we behave, the more the people around us suffer because of our behavior, the more we suffer. Because we sometimes don't see the beauty in the moment. So imagine this idea of expectation, reality, and the gap. Imagine then that that gap is the measure of your misery. And I literally think of it this way. I literally think of the more the gap is, the more I'm going to suffer. Think of these common expectations that we have. For example, if I do the work and do all the preparation, the project will flow smoothly. If they care about me, they'll call me back, or call me on my birthday, or tell me they care about me, or send me a gift, or invite me for coffee. If, then. If they're my friend, they'll never say bad things about me. If they're my spouse, they'll never say bad things about me. I know, I can hear you laughing. And why are we laughing about these things? Because we know it's not realistic. Because what's realistic is most of the time, our spouses will say nice things about us, but once in a while they're going to say things that aren't quite that pleasant. Once in a while, the project will go perfectly because of all the prep work we did, and once in a while, it ain't going to go perfectly despite all our preparation. Even though people care about us, they may not always show it. So we have these expectations that are lofty, fantasy, Cinderella, Disneyland type of ideas. They'll live happily ever after. But reality is, yes, they'll live happily ever after most of the time, and once in a while, they're going to be really angry at each other, and they're going to see things differently, and they're going to have different moods and have different grumpinesses that they each have to navigate, and so on, and so on, and so on. When the reality doesn't meet our fantasy, our expectation, we may feel upset, just a little, or a lot. We may worry, we may fret, we may feel anxious, we may stress out. And yes, we might get a tad grumpy. So this space is an important gap to notice. The good news is that the gap is something that we can work with. So in Buddhism, I mentioned that they say attachment is the root of all suffering. That suffering grows when we cling to how things should be instead of actually meeting life where life is on life's terms. It doesn't mean that we don't care, by the way. It doesn't mean even that we aren't interested in the outcome. What it does mean is if reality isn't meeting our expectation, then we need to manage our expectations so we can respond and be responsible, as opposed to react. Then we can meet this moment with poise, with equanimity, with the sense of, oh, this happened. Now what am I going to do? As my friend Martha Creek says, SW, SW, SW. Some will, some won't, so what? Sometimes things will go your way, sometimes they won't. What are you going to do about both? Imagine, though, that the reason there is this gap is man-made. I think of them literally as bubbles. And what those bubbles are BS, our belief system. And what's true is that your belief system may not be the same as your belief system. And that means that it can be changed. And it's up to each one of us to decide how we're going to adjust this measure of misery. So imagine we have bubbles, expectation, beliefs that are holding this expectation up, and then reality. The goal is to try and identify what those bubbles are, bubbles of belief, if you will, and then ask yourself, is this really something that serves me well? Imagine the bubbles being things like, this shouldn't be happening. They almost always have a should, shouldn't, ought not to, that sort of judgment in there. They should know better. If I did my part, this would be easier for everyone. Well, that may be true. This always happens to me. Expectation. I'm not spiritual enough because I'm feeling angry. It's a bubble. You're angry. Your expectation is you're not angry. You'll never be angry because you're a spiritual person. Well, yeah, you're a spiritual person and you're a human person because spiritual and human is the same thing. It's not separate. And in our humanness, there are times when we are joyful, maybe most of the times that we are joyful, and then once in a while there's just something that kind of irritates us. So what? The worst thing we can do for ourselves and for the people around us is to then add to the measure of misery by laying over yet another expectation that says, I'm not allowed to be angry. As opposed to, oh, I have a heartbeat. I'm human. And I'm having a moment that is angry right now. Completely different in our embracing of the flow of life. The good news is the closer we are able to allow reality and expectation to come together, the more able we will be to just enjoy the moment for what it is. Acceptance. And then from that place of acceptance, we can decide where we want to move next, how we want to be in this moment. Imagine being less likely to be offended, less likely to be worried about what other people think, less worried about our ability to respond when life throws a curve that we didn't expect. It means that when others do us some kind of harm, when they sin against us, that we'll be able to see it, take it, and choose how to be with it. Because there are times that we will be betrayed. There are times that we will be abandoned. There are times when people are going to say things that kind of sting. Can we adjust our expectations, manage our expectations to meet life on life's terms, which includes Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end, A to Z. And when we end up falling short of our own goals, when we sin, if you will, against ourselves, we'll be kinder to ourselves if we can meet ourselves on life's terms. So how do we do this? If I've convinced you that each one of our bubbles may be different, therefore those bubbles are optional, and they're also malleable. They can be popped and shifted and resized in various ways to bring reality into alignment with expectation. And if I've encouraged you to see that the gap is where our misery lies, then the next question, obviously, is how do we adjust? How do we burst these bubbles of belief? Jesus gave us a couple of examples of this. My favorite is what he said on the Sermon on the Mount, when he said, come to terms with your accuser while you're on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge will hand you over to the guard, and you will be thrown in prison. Now that sounds like, how is that possible that I'm going to the court with an accuser and I'm the one who's going to suffer? This is why. Because if we are judging and finding lack, finding the gap, then we're the ones who are miserable, grumpy, anxious, stressed. And sure, we sometimes allow some of that to dissipate. And how do we allow it to dissipate? We put it on everybody else. And so then they become miserable and stressed and so on. This is not the life we want. The key is come to terms with your accuser quickly. The accuser within you. And when you do that, when you come to terms with the should, shouldn't, it doesn't mean that you like it. It means that you know you're going to be with it. And Unity's third principle is ideas lead to experiences. So the idea of should, shouldn't, this shouldn't be happening, all of that can lead to that experience. So how do we shift these ideas? Come to terms with your accuser quickly. And where do we see it most powerfully in Jesus' example? In the Garden of Gethsemane. The night before he was executed, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. He goes to pray. And what does he say? Take this cup from me. I don't want it. I don't want it. Now, can you imagine a person like Jesus, totally, totally committed to his religion, to his God, to his belief system, about to undergo the most excruciating pain. Expectation that he might have, if I were him, would be, I did everything right. Why is this happening to me? And yet, what did he do? He prayed. And then, at some point, he accepted reality. That this was bigger than he could understand. Not my will, but thine be done. So, I'm going to give you a few ideas about popping these bubbles of belief that you might have. First, I'm going to encourage you to notice when it happens. And it happens any time that you're feeling a little irritated. So notice the irritation and go, oh, what was I expecting here? That's sort of step one. And you'll see up on the board, and I have some papers, copies of this if you want. I have paper copies over there if you want of this page that you can take with you, and you can fill it out to your heart's content and make it your own. So first step is to notice your expectation. And then the second step is to ask the question, is this universal? Is it a fact, or is it something that is a belief that I've made up? If it's a fact, then it doesn't matter whether it's you or you or you. Looking at it, we can all agree that it happened. That's fact. That would be reality. The belief is all the stuff that you might see differently, and you might see differently. And so those are the places where the suffering is and where we have the opportunity to change them. It's as if the suffering comes after the comma. Because what we have is, this happened, comma. They didn't call me, comma. And that means they don't like me, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, and, insert misery here. The good news about it is that you can change it. And because you're making up a story, you might as well choose a story that makes you feel better. So find a story of, when did I not call somebody back? Well, maybe it was when I was sick. Or maybe I had so many other things that I simply forgot. Oh, maybe that's why they haven't called either. That feels like less of a gap, less of a painful story that I'm telling myself. So take time to be still, notice the expectation and the gap, and then ask yourself, is it a story or is it a fact? If it's a story, choose another possibility, something that is more peaceful for you. If you have a hard time with it, one of the most powerful things that I've done is to ask myself, what is the next most loving thought I can have in this situation? Doesn't mean I have to go and sing Kumbaya with them, but what's just one tiny step towards a slightly more peaceful understanding of what's happening? Next question. Am I dehumanizing somebody else with this judgment? Because if I'm making my expectation more important than your expectation for your life, then I'm dehumanizing you. It is disrespectful. It is not honoring the fact that each person is their own person. Have I ever done anything similar? And how did I want to be treated when I did that? The example that I gave about not calling someone back. There are times when I haven't called people back. I'm fortunate because I haven't had anyone ever turn away from me because of that. They'll know that it was not something that is my intention. Well, if they don't call you, could you assume a kind intention or a good intention as well? This is that golden rule, the one that we see in all religions, in different words. And we find it in the Sermon on the Mount with Jesus. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. Do unto others. Not before they do it to you. That's in certain countries. But do unto others as you would have them do to you. And then the final one, I should give you this picture. Oh yeah, thank you, Glenn, is ask yourself in the midst of this, what can I be grateful for? So think of this New Year's thing, this New Year's celebration that kind of went into a New Year's not quite celebration. We had a lovely dinner. We were fortunate enough to have a lovely dinner in a lovely restaurant, speaking to a lovely person who was a student passionate about something that connected him with my husband. Isn't that something to be grateful for? Isn't that as important as seeing some fireworks somewhere? It's like the strongest little arrow that you can push at these bubbles of belief is to find something to be grateful for. And remember, with every one of these bubbles getting squished down or popped, the level of discomfort and dis-ease vanishes, becomes less. Even in disappointment, there is usually something redeeming that can be found. It could be a warm meal. It could be a lovely conversation with a friend. It could be the medical research that is helping to heal whatever diagnosis is miserable for us. Gratitude pops the bubble that says everything is wrong about this. And then one last one, other than just plain acceptance, of course. I say that as if it's just obvious, but of course it isn't. But what if this is just a moment? Oh, what if you can just do what Reverend Joy used to say all the time, which is, oh, well. And just like, oh, okay, so that's what happened this time. It doesn't mean it's forever. It doesn't mean that you have to love it or that you have to like it or even that you have to hate it. It's just a thing. Simply accept. And let's not be intolerant of those whose behavior we see as intolerant. This one's hard for me. Because if I see someone who is being kind of miserable themselves or grumpy or having a moment, I have a tendency, I sure hope I'm not alone in this, but I have a tendency to go, man, you're being really miserable. And it's actually affecting me by saying that, as opposed to, oh, they're not having a really good time right now. In my judgment, I'm actually adding to the misery. Good luck with that one. And if you can, be okay with it when you find yourself judging, because you don't need to beat yourself up about it. You're just going to be okay with it and try a different way next time. Jesus said that he who is without sin cast the first stone. Let us not be judgmental too much about ourselves and about others. So remember that some things will go our way. Some things won't go our way. The only thing we can control is, what do we do with them? What do we do with it? So notice when the grump shows up, it means there's a bubble that's being touched or that's holding something up. It's an invitation for you to look at what it is. And how can you make it smaller? Pause. Name the expectation. Notice the gap. And then check your belief systems and see if you can find ways to pop some of those bubbles that don't serve you well. Find one thing to be grateful for. Remember a time that you've done something similar. Stay in your lane. Let them have theirs. You take care of yours. Do what you can to mind the gap. That's where we get tripped up. That's where the grump lives. And peace begins when we stop fighting reality and instead we meet it with compassion and with kindness. Mind the gap. I bless you.